In this video, we are working on the second part of lesson 1.3, and we are on page 16 in your student journals. We're going to do problems 7 through 12, and these problems have to do with our learning target of I can find the midpoint or end point of a line segment. So go ahead in your journals, make sure you're on page 16. And I've written down the midpoint formula here. You're going to want to use that in these problems. I'll reference that several times. In 7 through 9, the endpoints of line segment PQ are given, and we need to find the coordinates of the midpoint M of that line segment. And so we're going to use the midpoint formula. So remember, to find the midpoint, it's the average of the x coordinates and the y coordinates of the endpoints. And so in this problem, the x coordinate x1 of point P is -4, and the y coordinate y1 is 3. I like to label those. And then in my second endpoint, I'm going to label the x and y coordinates with x2, y2. Now I'm just going to plug those into my midpoint formula. So x1 plus x2, that would be -4 plus 0 divided by 2. And the y coordinate of my midpoint I get by doing y1 plus y2 and dividing that by 2. So I just need to add and divide now. So -4 plus 0 is -4, divided by 2 is -2. And 3 plus 5 is 8, divided by 2 is 4. So the midpoint is located at -2, 4. I won't bother rewriting the midpoint formula again for number 8 since it's right here, but I'm going to go ahead and label my x and y coordinates. So those are the x and y coordinates of my first endpoint P. And these are the x and y coordinates of my second endpoint Q. So the x coordinate of my midpoint I get by taking the x coordinates, -2 plus 10, and dividing by 2. And the y coordinate of my midpoints is the sum of my y coordinates, 7 plus -3 divided by 2. -2 plus 10 is 8, divided by 2 is 4. And then 7 plus -3 is 4, divided by 2 is 2. So my midpoint is located at 4, 2. I would pause the video now and try number 9 on your own. I'm not going to talk through this one. I'm just going to write out the solution. Double check that solution with your work and fix any mistakes you might have. Now in number 10, 11, and 12, this one's a little different. In this one, we are given the midpoint and we're given one endpoint, and we're trying to find the coordinates of the other endpoint. So just to kind of give you an idea here, we're going to be given the coordinates of J. and the coordinates of the midpoint M. And we're trying to find the coordinates of the other endpoint. So we're still going to use our midpoint formula, but this time we're going to think about what we know. So in number 10, one of my endpoints is J. So I'm going to go ahead and label 7 and 2, the x and y coordinates, with x1, y1. Now I don't know endpoint K. That's what I'm trying to find. For now, I'm just going to say that endpoint K has x and y coordinates, x2, y2. And these are the coordinates I'm trying to find. So now I'm going to use my midpoint formula. So my midpoint, remember, it's located at x1, which is 7, plus x2, which I don't know. So I'm just going to leave it as x2, divided by 2. And its y coordinate is located at y1, which is 2, plus y2, which I don't know, divided by 2. Now, I do know the x and y coordinates of my midpoint. So whatever x2 is, I know that this x coordinate has to be 1 because that's the x coordinate of my midpoint. That helps me set up an equation. So this tells me that 7 plus x2 divided by 2 has to be equal to 1 because that is the x coordinate of my midpoint. And so now I can go ahead and solve this equation to find x2. To solve this equation, I need to get rid of the denominator 2 here first. So I'm going to multiply both sides of my equation by 2. And this tells me that 7 plus x2 is equal to 2. Now I need to subtract 7 from both sides. And so x2, the x coordinate of my endpoint K, has to be equal to negative 5. So I'm going to go ahead and put negative 5 there. Now I still need to find y2. So just like we did to find the x coordinate, I'm going to set up an equation. Whatever 2 plus y2 divided by 2 is, it has to be equal to the y coordinate of my midpoint, which is negative 2. So 2 plus y2 divided by 2 must be equal to negative 2. I'm going to solve this equation. Again, I'm going to multiply both sides by 2. And then subtract 2 on both sides. And this tells me that y2, the y coordinate of my endpoint K, has to be equal to negative 6. So the y coordinate, y2, of endpoint K is negative 6. We're going to skip number 11 to save space, and we're just going to work on number 12. Okay. All right, so in number 12, we know endpoint J is located at 216. So I'm just going to label 2 and 16 with x1 and y1. And again, I do not know the x and y coordinates of my other endpoint yet. That's just what I'm trying to find. So I know my midpoint. Using my midpoint formula, when I add x1 plus x2, which I know x1, so 2 plus x2, because x1 is 2, divided by 2, that's the x-coordinate of my midpoint. And the y-coordinate of my midpoint is when I take y1, which is 16, add it to y2, which I don't know yet, and divide it by 2. Now I'm able to set up an equation because I do know what the x and y coordinates of the midpoint are. And so whatever 2 plus x2 divided by 2 is, I know it has to be equal to the x-coordinate -9/2, because that is the x-coordinate of the midpoint. So that helps me set up one equation. So I know 2 plus x2 divided by 2 has to be equal to -9/2. And then with my y-coordinate of my midpoint, I know that x16 plus y2 divided by 2 has to be equal to 7, because they tell me that the y-coordinate of the midpoint is 7. And so my other equation is 16 plus y2 divided by 2 is equal to 7. So now I have these two equations here to solve. I need to multiply by 2 on both sides to get rid of the denominator 2. That cancels. And then subtract 2 on both sides. This tells me that the x-coordinate of my other endpoint k is equal to -11. To get the y-coordinate y2, again, I have to times both sides by 2. That will be the first step you always do when solving these equations. And I'm going to subtract 16 on both sides. So the y-coordinate of my endpoint k, y2, is equal to -2.